You know, this past weekend marked the one-year anniversary of the tragic flooding in southeastern Kentucky. Among the hard-hit areas, the small town of Garrett, right there in Floyd County.
It's a day they will not forget. And Tony Cavalier made a return visit to that flood zone in Garrett, where the tone of the people that live there is cautiously optimistic.
The kids like their dirt bikes in the hills. Life in this secluded Kentucky town on a slow comeback after the Great Flood. 1 year ago, the Blue Bridge was covered in muck and debris as the Beaver Creek swamped downtown Garrett. The surge of water flowing 2 city blocks into town. Magnolia and Front Streets turned into raging rivers. But on this quiet day, the creek ambled along, and life on Magnolia Street was peaceful. Rodney Watkins remembered the flood.
This place out here was a disaster area. Now, it sure God was, buddy. Buddy, water's all over this out here. Every bit of it. From up through there, it was over 10 more. Got his hardware store up there. It was as awful sight you ever seen in your life.
First stop, the mainstay of Garrett, Campbell's grocery store, where Lois O'Neill is a third-generation owner. Like most Saturdays, business was steady.
You got a good inventory in here.
Well, it's still not up to where it should be, but you just have to take one step at a time. There's 5 feet of water in here, and everything had to go, and so it's basically to start all over. We even had the cash register, everything had to go. Off of the bank, over to the highway.
Over the railroad ties up to the highway. Wow. And where were you when this was happening?
I was sitting over there watching.
Helpless and...
Helpless, just sitting there. There's nothing else you could do. Just wait for the water to go down.
Were you fearful that that might be it? You might have to retire?
I was thinking that morning. I thought, are we going to be here or what are we going to do?
On Saturday, the scars of the flood were still evident. Visiting from Knott County, the Sloans braved the flood in Hindman. Their story common across the 8-county strike zone.
Got killed, right up above us, 3 miles up above us, and then when you go right into Hyman, the lady that's actually related to your family, she lost her life.
We have fighting spirit here, and it's just good people, good people.
That's the way we were raised. As you get back on your feet, you start rebuilding.
For native Leslie Sloan, a Saturday of biking with the kids starts at Campbell's.
I was actually staying with my mom that night, and I woke up and the water was almost in my Jeep. So I got it out a couple hours later. If I hadn't, it would have been over top of my Jeep.
Down the street, we stopped in the auto store where Brian Chafin's a loyal customer.
Daggone, it devastated all of us. It was 3.5 feet in my garage. I don't even know how deep to get here.
It was 6 blocks, but it's over this camp.
Damn. About 4 or 5 feet in here.
Just hate to close because it's going to close, shut the community completely down, and I feel like if we close the business.
1 year and counting on the great rebuild and recovery.
Well, we've got Tony here to tell us about the visit. And Tony, I think what I really took away from that was the drive of the people there to rebuild. Because I think in that moment, it's easy to say, well, let's just scrap it, we're done.
Right. But this is home.
Right. They wanted to reinvest and make sure that they were able to come back stronger than before.
The beauty of the mountains lures them, and it is absolutely majestic, but it's also a little bittersweet because the steeper the mountains, the more the water drains down. And where the flood occurred in Garrett, the water was fed from 2 forks of the Beaver Creek, the right and the left fork. And those forks rise higher down toward Whitesburg, down toward Mousy. And so you get all that water that falls upstream and it flows past you. So, but the beauty is it's alluring, and folks down there have a dogged determination to come back.
Yeah. How does this compare to some of the other big floods we've seen in that region?
Off the charts. I went back to 1912, and the standard was 1957, and this was way above that. And so these floods, they've been relatively common, but nothing like this. There were years like 1984. The townspeople remember 2009,
right?
2021. So back-to-back years. But this one was off the charts as far as the hydrographs are concerned.
I remember, Tony, we were on the air for hours and hours that evening. Was this something, I don't know, I mean, was this a predictable thing, or was this something that it just popped up and where it kind of parked, those were the areas that were the hardest hit?
Absolutely predictable that there was going to be a major flood.
Yeah.
Unpredictable that this would be bigger than anything we'd ever seen. In other words, if you don't have data from a storm like this, it's hard to predict something
Sure.
that you've never seen before.
Right.
Yeah.
Just looking at the video of what it was like a year ago, it's really heartbreaking to see. And what would you say is the mood, or was the mood, when you talk to the folks that live there?
Since they're from there, since they're natives, they're determined to come back, you know.
Right.
But the reality is a flood like this, you know, gives you pause. And so it's important that the kids are educated and that the kids make better lives for themselves going forward. That's what they're thinking right now. So how is that best going to be done in a climate where we've had 2 floods in 2 years, but nothing like the one last year, of course. And so these are more common, and the folks down there know that somewhere down the road, hopefully not in the near future, there could be another big flood.
Again.
When that's for so long, it was this was thought that events like this were kind of like a once in a century kind of thing, but we're seeing them happen more and more. It's just different areas are getting hit at different times.
And just 2 weeks ago was Western Kentucky had a flood like this. So Kentucky is kind of a ground zero on this warming planet for big storms. And there's a reason for that. Maybe we can do a feature on that here on Studio 3.
Well, Tony, it's always great talking with you and hearing his perspective on these events.
I love being on the blue sofa with you, ladies.
Well, and we'll see you this evening. I have a feeling we'll see a fair story coming here soon. You'll be visiting the Gallia County Fair.
The Gallia County Fair.
Yeah, alrighty.
Good to see you, Tony.